You'll be getting fed up with me by the end of this conference, which is very soon. So, as I said yesterday, this mini keynote was in two parts. And just to refresh your memory, the title is called The Reality Distortion Field of Testing, and it comes from back in 1986 when Bud Tribble of Apple coined that phrase for Steve Jobs, which, when Steve was using his charisma, his charm, his authority to really coerce people into doing things that they felt they couldn't do and that was impossible. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. And we said that we're living in that in our organizations, the reality distortion field of testing. And I mentioned things like test plans, estimation, looking at things like documentation and scripts. And we finished off on meetings. And I've got two more to tell you about the reality distortion field, and then I'm going to give you my solutions. But before I do, can I just have a show of hands? How many people here actually use virtual meetings, as in a sort of a voice thing or going, wow, okay. Now, I'm going to talk about two more reality distortion fields, and then I'm going to move directly into the solutions which you all want to hear about, and my solution I'm going to present to you. Automation. We've heard a lot this week about automation and automating our tests, and I'm a big fan of automation, I really am. I grew up many, many years ago with one of the first automation tools that was not very clever, it wasn't very robust, and yet we tried to persevere with it. I think automation can be very good. It increases productivity. It makes us more efficient with our testing, potentially. It can find bugs quicker. Some of the automation tools, such as static analysis tools, some of the tools like coverage tools, that can help us establish what type of testing we do. And it also, dare I say it, provides testers with new skill sets, which is always a good thing. But here's the bad about it. I think we can waste an enormous amount of time on automation. I think automation can suck our energy out of what we're meant to be doing. And sometimes, if we sit down and think about it, what has taken us maybe 3-4 hours doing automation, it could take us about 10 minutes doing it manually. And yet we don't look at those things. The other thing I'm a bit concerned about is that execution tools are fantastic to give us confidence, running regression tests. But there is no tool on the market that can actually take away or replace this sort of testing. I wonder what happens if I press this. There is no tool on the market that can do that. There is no tool on the market that can replace you as manual testers. And don't let any of the vendors tell you otherwise. The other thing is, if you do too much automation, then basically you can lose your testing skills. And if you don't believe me on that, Google a white paper that was written by a guy called James Whittaker many years ago. He now works for Microsoft. He used to work for Google, and he was employed by Microsoft because he kept standing up at presentations in the States saying, "Why does Windows Vista suck?" And basically, he gave a presentation as to why Windows Vista was so bad. And I went to a Mac because of Vista. And Vista was appalling. And so Microsoft employed him and said, "Tell us why Windows Vista was so bad in your opinion." And it rocked the management team, because his conclusion was that they did too much automation and not enough manual exploratory testing. And Microsoft turned around and said, "James, would you like a job?" And he's there to this day, actually heading up exploratory testing teams. And I think sometimes there's too much emphasis on test execution rather than automation in general. And I think some organizations, I don't know if one of your organizations is the same, but some organization comes up ridiculous claims or quotes. I met one the other week, and it said this. The CEO of the organization said to the test group, "Next year, in 2018, I want 75% of all your tests automated." Absolute ridiculous statement to make, because what I said to the testers, cut your tests down to 100 tests, automate 75% of them, 75 of them, you've met your objective. In fact, why don't you automate all of them and you've automated 100%? Absolute ridiculous statements. So let's say, again, we spend about 3 days out of 15 on some form of automation. That's about 20%.